just wanted to talk about portals and the quote that inspired this. So historically, this is from an Arundhati Roy quote. And in fact, my little video boxes are over the quote, so I'm gonna do my best right now to read it. But historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine the world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoke behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. And so I'd like to introduce Gina Ferazzi, who has been documenting Inland Empire residents as they are grappling with this unprecedented change. So Gina, it's my pleasure to share your bio. Gina, you grew up in a new small New England town of Longmeadow, Massachusetts. And we've got some representation today from Longmeadow, Massachusetts. If you're from there, say hi in the chat box. You've been a staff photographer with the Los Angeles Times since 1994, and your photos are a part of the staff Pulitzer Prizes for breaking news in 2016, for the San Bernardino terrorist attack, and for the wildfires in 2004. And you'll be sharing that body of work with us tonight. You're an all-around photographer covering assignments from the Winter Olympics with my dad, and presidential campaigns to local and national news events. Your videos, documentaries include stories on Black heroin, health clinics, women priests, sports features, and marine suicide. Lately, you've spent the past 6 months documenting how the coronavirus pandemic has affected lives in the Inland Empire. A two-sport scholarship athlete at the University of Maine, Orono, hope I pronounced that correctly, you still hold the record for 5 goals in one field hockey game. Gina, thank you for taking my cold call and agreeing to be part of this conversation tonight. Is there anything you want to add to your background and your bio?
I'll just add that, you know, my humble beginnings began in Maine, and Jay Ryder is on here tonight. Thank you, Jay, for tuning in. He was very instrumental in pointing me in the right direction, and was certainly hard-nosed on me, and he knows that I appreciated that. So I'll add that. And I want to thank everybody from across the country for tuning in. So thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And Gina, before you even said yes, I called up Doug McCulloh. Doug is the Riverside Art Museum's photographic guru. Call him, ask him questions. He knows everything about contemporary photography. So I said, would you do this? And he's like, yes, I've been following her work. I'd love to. And you know, Gina, Doug does not want this to be about him, but I can think of no other person to honor your work in this conversation today. So thank you, Doug. And you know, Gina, you are a record holder for those field hockey goals. I just want to point out that Doug is a record holder for the world's largest photograph with the world's largest camera. You can share a little bit more about that, Doug. You are an American photographer notable for conceptual photographic project based on systematic randomness and chance operations. Your work is an extension of traditions of street photography, social documentary photography, oral history, and surrealist chance operations. You curated In the Sunshine of Neglect, which was defining photographs and radical experiments in inland Southern California in 1950 to the present, which showed at the California Museum of Photography and the Riverside Art Museum featured here. You're a board member of the Riverside Art Museum, you are chair of our Collections and Acquisitions Committee, and you're senior curator at the Museum of Photography in Riverside. Anything else you want to add, Doug?
That's probably too much already, so that's fine.
Thank you for being here. And these are some pictures of the show that you curated, Doug. So Gina, with no further ado, let's kick this off. Gina, what is this photograph, and what award did you most recently win for this?
Well, this was a really surreal scene that I shot last year. I won a second place in National Press Photographers Association, and then I just won first place in the Southern California Journalism Awards. I had never seen anything like this before in all the wildfires I've covered. These are patients removed from a skilled nursing facility as a wildfire was approaching their building. Where they are is crazy because the 60 freeway is right on their left side, and they are on like a dirt frontage road trying to escape wind and blowing debris and flames that were approaching the building. So I had a hard time seeing, and they had a hard time seeing, and what made it really unique was there weren't enough ambulances to save all these people. So law enforcement came with their cars, they put people in back seats, they wheeled them across the overpass, did whatever they could. So that's what this scene is.
You know, I'll jump in. This is Doug. We talked about this before a couple of days ago, and you made the point at the time that you worked really hard to try and respect the dignity of these people trapped in this crazy situation. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, normally if I'm in a nursing home, you know, the HIPAA laws come into play, and I have to have permission from the one person or the family that I'm there to photograph. Here, all these people are out in the open, and I didn't want to show them in a bad light. I didn't want to show them hurting. So I tried to shoot it in a way that showed they were in a dangerous situation and also respecting their dignity. So that's what I was trying to do there.
That's wonderful.
And Doug, you had mentioned that it reminded you of something of Dante a bit.
Yeah, I know. It's remarkable. You can't, they're like displaced. They're someplace you don't know. I mean, the swirling smoke, and there's sort of debris flying around, and the figures are sort of smeared by the smoke and light. So they're in some other world. That's the way this photo struck me.
Yeah, it was a situation I had never seen before. So hopefully we won't have to go through that again for their sake.
It's hard for me to imagine this. I drive past this a lot on my way to work, and I just can't imagine that scene of these, you know, these folks just right there on the street. Before we move on, I just wanted to check it. Is everyone seeing the photograph clearly? Is there a color wheel interrupting your view of the image?
Yes.
Okay, let me fix that before we move on. So
I thought that was just me seeing the color wheel.
sorry about that, everyone. So hold on one second while I put that away, and we will start now again. All right, share screen, and we are back in business. All right, moving forward. So Gina, do you want to talk about the Wildfire Team Pulitzer? This was your first Team Pulitzer that you received?
Yes, a little backstory. I just come from work one evening. I happened to turn on, our local news sometimes starts at 9 p.m. So I just turned it on, and I noticed, wow, there was a bad fire brewing not too far away from here in northern San Bernardino. So I'm like, oh boy. So I said goodbye to my 2 golden retrievers, and they weren't happy because I had just gotten home. And I went out, ended up spending all night on the fire line. This was the next day. You know, when you cover a lot of wildfires, it's the black smoke that is the danger. And so when you see black smoke in a neighborhood, you know something's burning and it's not good. So I went in this guy's backyard. I saw this fireball coming at us. I mean, I shot this, I think, with a 20mm lens. That's how close we were. So we were both running, and I happened to get him at the moment he was jumping over the pool. And that actually ran A1 the next morning.
You're getting comments in the chat, I have to say, Gina, that says, good job with that, Gina, and people chiming in, yeah.
Okay.
You have a cheering section in the chat.
All right, thank you. I covered this fire for 11 days, and so did my coworkers, my team of photographers. There were 3 counties burning at the same time, and more than 3,500 homes were lost. So it was a crazy time. This is how close I was to the helicopter dropping water. I mean, once again, I'm shooting this with a wide angle lens, so that's how close I was. And yeah, just to, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for the non-technical photographers, if you're shooting with a really wide lens, you are right in there. Like, you know, you're really right by that helicopter.
And if people on the East Coast are wondering, God, how did you get in there? Well, California has a media law that allows media across a blocked road or where the public isn't allowed in. And we're in full fire gear, you know, helmets, yellow hazmat, not hazmat, but fire gear. And So it's because of that law that enables us to get these kinds of pictures.
If you're brave enough and crazy enough to be there.
This is that same guy jumping the pool. He actually had pet turtles, and he was trying to rescue them from like an in-ground den that they were in, and he put them in his living room. I remember that, because he didn't want them to burn up. It was just a crazy day. Yeah, you can see the wind blowing. I mean, we have, for the East Coasters, we have crazy winds called Santa Ana winds, and they're very warm winds. And with the dry humidity, any kind of a spark from a lawnmower or a car fire can wreak havoc. So that's what this is. There's people evacuating. After I stayed out on the fire line all morning, this is what these residents awoke to. And I remember that after being out all night, my eyes were so swollen, they looked like hot dog buns. And I went in the car and turned up the AC, and then just stuck my face in the AC unit. So I got all this fresh air just to kind of wake me up, but also to get some of the smoke out of my lungs. I mean, I had a mask on, but when you're out all night, you know, it can just take over.
So you made the comment that you shot this fire scene for days and days. So you stay on this assignment?
Yeah, what our photo editors are really good at doing is, if you start a fire, I mean, not start a fire, sorry, if you're assigned to a fire, or if you find out on your own that a fire is happening, which is in the case for me a lot, because I live out in the eastern part of Southern California, and I live the farthest east. So I kind of am a hound to the news to try to find out what's going on every day. So they're very good at letting you follow the story through, you know. So you can sort of figure out your storyline, you know, the people, you know, the firefighters, you get to know the CHP at roadblocks, so they know who you are. So it's a real cohesive way for coverage, I think. This is up in Big Bear at night. San Bernardino National Forest was also burning. So this is just you know, I think it's just cool to show what firefighters are dealing with. And I think he was lighting a backfire, which is what they have to do sometimes to
We have a question.
Fire, they set a fire. So when they meet, okay.
We have a question in the chat about, well, people are saying the photos are amazing, but which fires were those?
It was so long ago, but this started in northern San Bernardino off 40th Street that went into Devore. Drew, maybe you can help me out. They name each fire, and this was a time when San Diego, San Bernardino, Riverside, and LA County all had massive fires burning.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to Gina about this. I was down in San Diego, 2004, young adult, and there was ash coming down from the sky, and I just wanted to go home to East Highlands Ranch where I grew up, and I couldn't get home because East Highlands Ranch was on fire too. And it was really one of those moments, you know, where from a young adult to an adult, you know, that that what you thought was safety isn't really there. I don't remember the fires. I know, Mom, you probably do. My mother is from Highland. Mom, I don't know if you want to put that in the chat or if anyone remembers which ones these are. But, you know, we had lots of fires growing up, but this was one of the worst. And Gina, my dad refused to leave. You know, they wanted him to evacuate, but he refused to leave.
This was in 2003, October 25th, I think, is when I started on it. Oh yeah, Jan will know. It's called the Old Fire. Yeah.
Old Fire, yeah.
Yeah. So this was Halloween, which you'll see from one of the next photos. Yeah, this house had decorations up and they couldn't save it.
You know, from the point of view of a photo curator, these are amazing photos. These are like, they're news photos, but they're poetry somehow. The firefighter down at the left with flame coming out of the tree. I mean, they're just amazing scenes. I think you're very, very good at this.
Oh, well, thank you. My colleagues are just as good. So we have a lot of experience, unfortunately, covering wildfires. This was in Devore. This I happened to see that this little driveway that went up to like a hill, and there were two homes up there, and I saw some people. And what I always try to do the day after is to get people involved, because you know, you can shoot silhouetted firefighters all day long, but when you have a person and you have a moment like this, it's really an intimate time. You know, that was his bed that he's holding on to. So
Wow.
I think his name was Wyatt.
You have Jay Ryder jumping in and saying, Gina has always brought an art component to news photography.
Well, thank you, Jay. I must have learned it from you. These are at the evacuation centers. I mean, back then, the media had a little bit more access. Now I think it's a little bit harder. Depends on where you are, and you have to gauge it. I mean, you identify yourself, and if they're okay with you taking photos, then great. But if they don't want you around, then I leave. I mean, they're in enough grief and pain as it is, so. Okay, from that to another terrible news situation.
I will say, Gina, as I was putting this presentation together, I mean, it was definitely brought up a lot of emotions, and it's remarkable to me that you have been there at all of these incredible, terrible moments, you know, and you've lived this. I mean, you were there. But do you want to talk about the Team Pulitzer award-winning work here?
Yes, so this happened around 11 a.m., give us a little bit of time. I live in Riverside, and I'm about 20 minutes from where this happened. I got the call about 11:15. I got there at 11:45. It was a very fluid situation. The building where the terrorist attack took place is across from a golf course, which I've played hundreds of times, and I know it really well. So I snuck onto the golf course, and I saw the people that evacuated the building holding hands. If you go to the next frame, they're on the second fairway. And so that was probably the best photo I got when I arrived. A couple later, I noticed the cop cars and the cops were like getting in a formation, red lights blaring. I'm like, something's going on, because they hadn't caught the gunman yet. So my company car is a gray sedan. It kind of looks like a detective car. So I jumped in the line of cop cars, put on my flashers. We went maybe 3 miles away. Yes, we did go through red lights, but I was with the cops. And look, this is the deal. You either get in right away or you don't get in a new situation. So I had to go, you know. And I stayed behind the car. I know, I've been to terrorist training in London. I know your engine block is the safest place to be. So I hunkered down. I actually shot that first photo, I think with a 70, I was very close, maybe a 100mm lens, not a long zoom lens at all. Little did we know, 2 streets over, the firefight had started, which I did not get involved with that. They thought there was a third gunman, and so we were searching, but we didn't really know. We didn't know till later that night or the next day who was who. So this is the car that the terrorists were in when they were killed. This is the next day. And once again, you know, there were about, I would say our whole staff was on this news situation, covering all angles. There was a visual memorial set up at the corner. Our photographers, if it wasn't me, it was another photographer, would go there every morning or every afternoon and document the new flowers, anything that was there. A candlelight vigil. I prefer to use the ambient light and not pop in a flash because it ruins the mood. And not all these photos were in our team Pulitzer. A couple of mine were, a couple of another photographers were, and then the whole reporting staff that was involved. So that's what a team is. So these are just sort of gives you a good idea of what we were covering that time.
So you're essentially acting, I mean, this is in Southern California, but you're like a war photographer. How many mass shootings have you been to?
I think 5 or 6 actually, which I guess you don't want to, might be your claim to fame, but you know, there was the one in UC Santa Barbara where the college kid shot a bunch of girls walking around, cheerleaders. There was the nail salon shooting where the deranged husband went into the hair salon and shot people in Seal Beach. There was the Gabby Giffords shooting in Arizona. I mean, she survived. Her husband, Mark Kelly, is running for her seat in Arizona as we speak. And then the Vegas mass shooting. I mean, that one was like horrible. And then this one. So, you know, when I'm going to these situations, if it just happened, I'm thinking, okay, what lenses do I need? Because I have to jump out of the car and run. If I go there, you know, 12 hours later, I'm looking for more aftermath stories, telling the stories of the people grieving and things like that. So that's my state of mind in covering these. This was a visual, that's the wife of one of the victims, shooting victims. Another vigil. Even the Muslim community, you know, held vigils, and this was a church that the media was invited in. And it was just everybody was upset. I mean, it didn't matter what denomination you were. It was a horrible situation. This is a funeral for one of the victims. The family outside the church. The wife. Another funeral. I'm pretty far away here, and I was telling Doug that some family members didn't want us there, and I didn't go. I didn't press the situation. Others said, yeah, but can you stand across the street? I'm like, sure. So I'll stand across the street with a very long lens and stay out of sight, out of mind, and try to capture the feeling and the moments of what's going on. This photo might look out of place after a funeral, but this is where the family of the terrorists lived. And so the landlord was boarding up the windows and the door, and someone had come and put an American flag on the door. So it was sort of ominous.
Wow, it's so sobering looking at the photos. It's amazing.
And it's now we jump forward to COVID.
The news is getting better and better, isn't it?
Better and better. And I know it's so, Gina, with COVID and the social distancing, this really provided an opportunity for you to really do photo essays of Riverside and the community. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the photographers were invited to do? And I wanted to start with this one actually. So Anna Lee, Ophelia, I think you're on the call. That's Ophelia's daughter. Ophelia is the chair of our Cheech campaign and a board member. And Anna's just amazing. And so here I am, home in my 3rd trimester pregnancy, and I have a baby, and I'm like, what is happening? What is happening? And I see this, and I see Anna, and it brought me such joy. And that's how I found you, Gina. I didn't know that you were at the San Bernardino Sun and you knew my dad. Like, I just was like, who is this Gina Ferazzi putting amazing images in the LA Times? So anyway, tell us a little bit about this time.
Well, my first, I think, assignment for COVID was, I think, January 28th. We knew something was going on. The photographers were pretty much kicked out of the office in February. The paper was put together remotely. It still is. Photo editors work from home. And our photo editors have been really great coming up with themes and story ideas. And all the photographers live all over Southern California. So the first one was document your neighborhood. Let us know what's going on. How is your neighborhood dealing with this? And so, I called around. Some of my best friends, longtime Riverside people, were great helping me find people. And then I'd find a group of people, and then they tell me about another group of people. And, Anna lives 2 streets over from me. I never even met her. And, so it's nice to put a face with her signs. Her signs, Community Over COVID, have been all over my neighborhood, and I did not know who put them together. So I wanted to do a portrait of her in late dusk light, just add a little bit more mood to it. I don't like shooting at noon. I'd rather shoot late afternoon or dusk. So I think it really helps the impact of the picture.
Ophelia has jumped in and says, Anna's watching with me.
Okay.
And also there's another question, which is sort of broad, which is from Jay Ryder. Any thoughts in retrospect about whether any of your work would have been even stronger in black and white?
Yes, and I will make that judgment come contest time, Jay, when I'm looking at everything and, all the tones, to submit for the newspaper. They want color. If it's a story, you can sort of talk it over with your photo editor and see if it might run more cohesively as a black and white piece. This next story that we're going to go to, I almost wanted to change it to black and white, but it didn't really help it. One of my photo editors asked if we could find people that were homeschooling. So Anna actually told me about, this is Kristen Bristow on the left here, and she lives a couple miles away from me. So I went to visit her one morning when she was teaching her 3 girls at the kitchen table, and she actually mentioned to me that it wasn't just her, it was 2 other families that were homeschooling 8 kids, ages 6 to 12 amongst them, and they had all quarantined together. This is Gabe Roth. He's a record producer, owns his own recording studio in town. He taught the kids music, and the day was scheduled just like a school day. So I think these kids got just amazing one-on-one attention. And this is a science presentation where the younger kids actually teamed up with the older kids and had to research a project and then give a presentation. This is at the kitchen table of one of the family's houses. And they all quarantined together. I stayed outside. I'm shooting through a window. The only time I went in was a Christian mask on. And so I wanted to be careful to maintain social distance because they had quarantined them. They hadn't left the house in months. And I did not want to be the one that brought in the bad germs. So they're leaving one house to go to another house for a cooking class. This actually is a judge in town, one of the moms, and she taught the kids speech class. So everybody just pulled together their talent and resources and made it a really enjoyable time for the kids. This is PE class. This is one of the moms teaching yoga in the front yard. This is one of the dad who's an attorney in town teaching archery. This was just a nice moment with Andy and her sister. They teamed up to do a presentation, and so I was always looking for moments because here I am on the outside on a front porch shooting in, and the kids were great. They didn't pay attention to me that really at all. So it made it really nice.
It's one of the magic things about photography. If you just hang around long enough, pretty soon you fade away into nothing.
Yeah, that's how I prefer.
There's a great French photographer, Robert Duano. He said the secret wish of every photographer is to be invisible.
Yes, for true.
Yeah.
This was pretty much, I think, the last week of their school year, and I wanted to do a group photo, and so it was fun. They did a nice cheer, and the name they called their school Rothbush Academy, which was coined out of the last names of the 3 families. So they were, they're having fun.
Michael Elderman jumps in and says he shot a photo of Gabe through a window for his COVID project in Riverside.
Of Gabe, oh, Gabe Roth, yes.
Yeah, Gabe Roth.
Yeah. He's getting a lot of publicity these days because his record producing and music producing is in Riverside, so it's kind of nice. Okay, we'll segue here to test sites. If you live in California, you can get a test even if you don't have a symptom. So, you know, I've been tested twice. I'm fine, and you know, I try to stay on top of it, just because I'm all over the place. This is a nose swab. You know, I was concerned about showing the guy in the car, but I think with his sunglasses and his mask, you can't identify him. So I think I'm in the clear there. This is just a nice moment of the nurses helping put on the PPE.
Beautiful light. I know you always pay attention to light. I mean, it's so
Yes.
gorgeous.
Yeah, if I don't see the light, I have a hard time shooting and finding the moment, unless it's sports, but we'll talk about that later. This was just a fun find. Our local Italian restaurant in town, Mario's, you know, they couldn't serve diners inside, and so they were doing a takeout business. And this is a local resident who rode her bike to get, I think she got some fettuccine. And when she opened up her bag, she was lucky to find a nice roll of toilet paper with the Mario sticker on it. So that's when toilet paper was hard to find. This was a situation where I asked a friend of mine, Margie Hapt, I'm like, do you know anybody that's doing anything differently? How are they handling COVID and the stress? And this is the Stowe family. I talked to Julie, and they said, well, on a Sunday coming up, they're going to celebrate their nephew's prom that got canceled. So they dressed up in a role reversal, and you can see the family in a Zoom class on their laptop. And they just danced around the living room and had a great time. And a little while later, some of their neighbors came dressed up. And so it just relieved the stress of all this COVID and being indoors and, you know, having a good time. This is Easter morning. Somehow I found out that the mayor was going to gather with his neighbors and sing Amazing Grace. So that's what this is. The neighbors are across from him in the street there. This is Easter morning. Now this is kind of a crazy scene because this is Mount Rubidoux, our famous little mountain in town. And this is Easter morning sunrise service, which normally would have people, but it was during COVID. I actually walked up there in the dark at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh my God, nobody's here. I finally heard some faint music, and the guitar player, they were doing a live video stream of this guitar player and one preacher to people on a Zoom meeting so they could actually be there even though they couldn't be there. So that's why this is a surreal scene. It's normally would have been filled with people.
Yeah, that's the site of the oldest sunrise Easter service in the country, actually.
That's the first time I've ever gone, actually.
So anyhow.
Yeah. This is, I met a pastor at a protest, and I got his name and cell phone. I said, well, hey, let me know if anything's going on at your church. And he, again, I'm always networking. I'm always trying to get my next storyline and photo idea. And he said, well, we're having a Juneteenth celebration outside our church. So that's what this is. This is a Juneteenth. They all got together and did this line dance, which kind of made a nice photo.
You know, what's kind of interesting is, I think most people's impression, and mine to some extent, is that if you're a long-time, high-rolling, accomplished photographer for the LA Times, that you would have these photo editors and people assigning you where to go all the time, and yet you have the freedom to generate your own story ideas. I think that must be a good thing. Yeah,
they give me a lot of freedom. I mean, I live 60 miles from the office, actually now close to 70 because the office moved near LAX. But because I live the farthest away and we don't have a reporter out here right now, I'm just trying to come up with my own story ideas. And I'm not the only photographer that does this. We all have the freedom and the respect and the confidence from our editors to produce and pursue our own stories. I mean, that's like a major, major objective for the photo staff. We were all trying to get into hospitals during the worst part of COVID, and it's been it was really tough because of HIPAA laws. I finally got into this one, and, you know, I had an entourage of PR people with me, and I just didn't want to shoot nurses in the hallway. So I had to ask the PR people, look, is there somebody who's awake and coherent enough to ask if I could take their photo and get their name? So we did, and we found this guy, and this is ICU. I'm in full PPE. There's actually a glass wall with a door between him and me. So yeah, this is ICU. This, you know, this I found out from the Stowe family. They, Matt Stowe runs OctoClean, which has been, you know, hired in many, many cases now to disinfect medical facilities using electrostatic, I don't want to call it a chemical, but just electrostatic procedures. And actually airplanes are using this now. It actually drops on the surface and spreads out, as opposed to, you know, taking a rag and wiping. You can miss something. So this right now is the best way to disinfect for COVID. After the neighborhoods theme from our photo editors, our theme switched to outdoors. And a lot of businesses were getting permits from the city to move their services outside. This is a local barbershop in town. I found out that they were working outside. I called the guy, asked if I could come by. And so this is kind of a funny scene. We've got a little kid getting a haircut and the guy with the flip-flops. But they're just trying to maintain their businesses and keep their employees working. Another one of the outdoor themes, because gyms are closed. This guy is a rock climber, and he was going to go up Mount Rubidoux, and he's using the steel patio canopy to do strengthening exercises. I have to admit, my long years of hunting for features in the state of Maine has really helped me during COVID. Thank you, Jay. You know, you drive around and you're looking, you're finding something. So that's what this was, a wild feature, but it fit our outdoor theme. This is a hair salon in town, and I wanted to back up a little bit so you kind of see, you got the pink and the white against this sort of shoddy, you know, wall, and there is a dumpster on the right, which I try not to get in the photo, but you know, they're making the best of it. They have a portable air conditioner there on the right side, and they're making it work. That's the inside.
I can't resist just throwing in this comment that the driving around and finding the photo, it has a long, long history in photography. The most famous photograph from the Dust Bowl, the migrant mother, Dorothea Lange, it was her just driving around. It's late in the day, and she's actually thought, well, I'll just drive around a bit more. And then there was a dirt road leading to these pea pickers camp, and she passed it by and then thought, nah, I better go see what's down that dirt road, and got that photo just driving around. So there you go.
Yeah, it's hard in California because I'm on the freeway a lot. It's not like I'm on Route 1 in southern Maine. So so again, the outdoor theme, this is Fairmont Park, which is in Riverside. It's a, you know, it has lots of hidden gems. If you go there at certain times of day with the light and the shadows, and normally there are paddle boats in the lake, and they've been taken out because of COVID. And this is the first time I had seen kayakers. So I thought it made a nice feature. Yeah, same thing here. You'll see fishermen, but the kayakers are new. And in the midst of COVID, we're still having wildfires. This was in Cherry Valley. You know, climate change is not giving us a break here during COVID, and it's like the fire plumes were getting bigger and bigger.
This is another photo to me that's made by the light is so amazing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, actually, this same road, you'll see I stayed on this spot for a while, and you'll see different times of day, you know, what took place. These are your wildland firefighters that are dropped in to douse hotspots with rakes and hose and things like that. There's that plume moving. It's getting sunset now.
We have a request from Annette Flanagan.
Okay.
Tell the folks about your homemade photo lab in Mom's candle closet you set up in high school.
Oh, do you want to hear about that now? Okay, well, I guess I should have started that at the beginning, but my humble beginnings did start. I had a black and white darkroom in my mom's candle closet in Longmeadow. And that's pretty much how I got into developing my own pictures and appreciating photography. Other than that, it was playing sports that got me to the next level. I mean, I could shoot sports with my eyes closed some of the time more than anything else. I just knew how to anticipate it because I played a lot of sports. And in Maine, I shot a sport a day. So after I graduated college, I drove around to 5 newspapers, and I have a journalism degree. I took one photo course in Maine, but it was just a basic one, and I hardly went because I had to be on the playing field at 3 and the class started at 3. So I drove around to these 5 Maine newspapers. The last one had an opening for a part-time photographer. I'm like, okay, I'll interview for that. And I got that job. The Kennebec Journal in Augusta, Maine. I think it was a 20,000 circulation paper. And then a year later, I was hired at the First Color Daily in Maine in Lewiston. And Jay Ryder was my photo editor. He hired me. So Jay is here now. Okay, let's segue back to the pictures. This is a long exposure. You'll see we don't stop shooting because night falls. A lot of us stay out on these fire lines all night long if it's a huge fire. We bring tripods. We try to make a scene that's just shows the vastness of the fire, but a slow shutter speed actually, you know, it shows the movement, and I guess it is art in some sort of a way, the way you look at it. Obviously, the heat wave hit during COVID, and this is just the Santa Ana River near me, and a lot of people were coming here from Orange County to get away from the beaches, because this is sort of a private area, and you have to really know where it is to find it. So they could, you know, a family could come and have their space and not worry about getting too close to this is another driving around looking for a hot weather feature. It was the end of the day. I'd been looking all day, and I saw this. I'm like, pull the car over. These guys had got a slip and slide, put it in their front yard, and filled it with soap. So I guess it has a COVID theme to it.
I love it.
We're back at Fairmont Park. They wanted me to find hot weather photo in the Inland Empire during COVID. And I drove around the backside of the lake, and I was talking to him. And as I was talking, he put his hand up to his face to wipe the sweat off his eyes. So I always had the camera around my neck. And as he started doing it, I started shooting. And I'm like, that's the photo. So that worked out pretty well. Back to the fires. I mean, these giant water dropping helicopters need to get a water source from somewhere. And lots of times you'll find people waiting to watch it. It's kind of a dramatic scene. You know, they blow a lot of wind from the propellers and sprays everywhere. And I was watching these little kids, and they could barely stand up, and their hair was blowing. So it made a nice feature to get, if the fire is like super high into the hills and the mountains and you can't get to it. So this was a way to illustrate it. So that's that one. This is one of the first photos that I I shot for our neighborhood themed photo project. I asked a friend, I said, do you know anybody who's had to change their routine, you know, because of COVID? And she said, oh yeah, well, there's a girl that's a ballet, a dancer, and she can't go to class because they've been canceled, but she has to do her routines via a video Zoom in her bedroom. So I called her mom and I asked, do you mind if I come by? I'll shoot from outside her bedroom window. And so this is what the scene was. So I thought it turned out really well. I mean, she spent a good half hour dancing, so I had plenty of time to peep into her bedroom window, but she knew I was there anyway, so it turned out well. Oh, this is another wild find. I was in a Palm Springs area of Ranch Cucamonga doing a story on how the retirees, or snowbirds as we call them, were handling being in COVID because restaurants were closed, so they were all leaving early. And I'm thinking, I gotta find something else that illustrates this. So I was trying to either find somebody golfing, or so I'm driving around, and most of the golf courses are in a gated community, and I did find this one that wasn't. So I walk out on the course, and lo and behold, I see this guy who had brought a pillow. He's in the middle of the fairway reading a book. And I'm like, there's no way this would have happened in any other time but during COVID. So, you know, that was a good find. You know, this was a typical scene when COVID hit. You know, all the playgrounds had yellow tape on them, and, you know, you saw the disappointment on kids' faces. They couldn't swing on a, you know, in the playground.
Right.
We're back to the Stowe family when I said neighbors had come and were dressing up and there was social distancing. And so it was a Sunday afternoon. They were all having a good time, just trying to relieve the stress of being indoors with COVID. This Memorial Day, the theme stays with COVID because he's wearing a mask, and this guy would come visit his wife every day, but he couldn't come during COVID. So this is the first time he had been able to come in weeks. So he's at the gravesite praying for her. And once again, with things being canceled, graduations were canceled. So they had to do drive-by graduations. This is a girl who got her red rose, and after driving by, and was cheering on a fellow classmate from behind. This was a really serious situation. There's a nursing home in town where the nurses stopped coming to work for fear of COVID because they weren't getting enough PPEs. So I got a call early one morning, like, Gina, you got to go. And so I went, and they evacuated 83. They evacuated everybody, all the patients from the nursing home, and because half of the place had COVID and people weren't coming to tend to them.
Wow.
I'm in another hospital, an ER. I wanted to try to depict what was going on in an ER. This was a couple of months into COVID, and what they were seeing is the trauma patients were coming back. So not only were they dealing with COVID patients, but they were dealing with trauma. This guy had just arrived on an AirMed helicopter with a brain injury. And I was trying to use slower shutter speeds to give you motion, like speed, like they're hurrying him in. So that was the point of the blur. It was actually shot that way. It wasn't photoshopped or anything like that. The next one is, we have some mega churches in the Inland Empire, and they were trying to open up. So I was there to photograph a portrait of the pastor. So I'm in the front of the church, and I thought, you know, that portrait doesn't really tell the story. So I look over and I see these two praying. So from the front of the church, I quietly took some pictures of them, and because I thought, wow, all these seats are covered with plastic. Normally this church would have 2,000 people in it. So I waited for them to be done praying, and then went up to them, asked their permission if they were okay being photographed, and they were fine. So that worked out well for the story.
So in a strict sense, if they had said no, could you still use it, or you wouldn't use it, or?
I would say, do you mind if I use the photo and not use your names? I could have probably gotten away with, residents of or parishioners of, because you really can't see who they are with masks on.
Right.
My editors probably would have been okay with that. If they had said, no, don't use my photo, don't use any, then I wouldn't have used it at all. Yeah. This was a woman who was recuperated at home with COVID, and I was there to take her portrait. And her deal was that I think she worked as a maid and obviously needed that income. So when I arrived at her house, she was sitting in a chair with a Bible. And during the photo shoot, she clutched the Bible and looked down on it. And I'm like, oh, well, that made the moment. I mean, it was a portrait, but it's what she did during the portrait that went an extra step, and it really made it a nice picture.
How many times do you miss that moment and go, damn?
Oh, lots. Yeah, you learn if you're walking up to somebody, you got to have your camera ready. I mean, you just do.
I thought I would ask.
This is a situation where this is available light, which I like to use frequently. She had some 20-year-old sons in prison awaiting trial for nonviolent crimes. And all the jails were getting inundated with COVID, and she wanted them released. So that was the story. Mother wanting her sons to be released out on bail so they wouldn't get COVID. So that was the story. I was walking down my hallway in my house, and I looked out and I see my neighbors eating dinner outside. And I'm like, I've never seen Norman Tracy eat dinner outside. So I had emailed her and I said, wow, I'm doing this theme about outdoors. I mean, how come you're eating outside? She goes, we just needed a break. We've been inside with COVID. And so I asked them when they were going to eat outside again. And she said, 5 o'clock on Thursday. So I just stood in my doorway and I kind of used the screen to frame them. So it gave it a little bit more depth. So that's where that came from. People were still going to the driving range, but not everybody was wearing a mask. And, I'm an avid golfer, and I still won't golf because, I don't want to touch the golf cart. I don't want to touch the balls. But yeah, this is the scene at the driving range during COVID. Go ahead.
In here that, this isn't Inland Empire, but when I was researching you, this was picked up New York Times, Harvard, a student writing about the Navajo Nation, and it's just so beautiful. So I really wanted to have you speak about this piece.
I got the assignment to go to Navajo Nation in a rural part of Arizona to show how they were dealing with COVID. And I really only had 2 days. I could have spent a month there. And as I was driving there, it's like a 6-7 hour drive, and it was pouring rain, which is really odd. And then I get over this vista and I drop down in. I'm like, oh my God, the clouds broke open and the sky was beautiful. And, this is a typical house. There's no electricity. That's a phone line, you see. So not only are they dealing with COVID, they have no electricity and they have no running water. So this shot, as surreal as it is without people in it, I think it tells the story.
Michael Elderman describes it as haunting.
Yeah,
it is.
If it hadn't rained, it wouldn't have been as dramatic probably. But I have to admit, sunsets there and dusk in Arizona are pretty dramatic. This is a woman who was actually in Vienna at the time. She's a world traveler. And this was early into COVID. And she thought, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to get home unless I leave now. And this was a story about people who have homes in Joshua Tree, the high desert, who are escaping to these homes. And so she got out of Vienna, she got back, and so she's safely in her home in Joshua Tree. And normally she rents this home out like $600 a night. It's a gorgeous place. So I don't know how we found her, the reporter found her. So I did a couple of shots inside, but I thought her looking out, and you can see it's desert terrain. I just thought it was a poignant moment. Okay, this is not Riverside, but everybody can relate to going to a Dodger game, except during COVID. These are two season ticket holders. Another theme for the photo staff was a weekend, what to do during a weekend at COVID. And there's this park called Elysian Park near Dodger Stadium. And if you wind your way through the park and then sort of follow it to the edge of a bluff, you can see Dodger Stadium lit. So I got up there and I had no idea, but these season ticket holders brought a generator, brought a radio, they had grilled 60 hot dogs. And so they're watching the Dodger game. They can't hear anything, but they're in their faraway left field spots as close as they can get. So I waited till dusk, and yeah, I think it turned out pretty well.
I have to say though, my Canadian wife, who you would think would be a major hockey fan, has turned into a Dodger fanatic. And when this ran in the paper, she's like, check this out, we should go. I swear to God.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you, it's sort of a secret way to find it, but I'll let you know if you want to go.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely cover July 4th fireworks, and the unique thing about this is this was, I think, the only celebration in Southern California at Los Alamitos. But the rule was everybody had to be in their car, on their car, or next to their car. So that's why you see everybody at their cars. I mean, you could not leave it during COVID. So I brought the tripod and did the slow exposure, and the shot turned out pretty good. Okay, so if you go to a Dodger game now, you know, fans aren't allowed, but this is what the scene is behind home plate. They're cutout figures stuck in the seats. And the rules now for photographers are, my spot is usually on the field level next to the dugout, the away team dugout. And as you see by that guy in blue, there are some cameras down there on remotes. So you can set a remote up down there, but you have to be up in the grandstands overhead to shoot a game. And it was like, oh gosh, we hate shooting overhead. You know, eye level's so much better, so much more impact and drama, but that's the rules. So I did do a game, and I don't know if we have that shot that's coming next. Oh yeah, I was so surprised. This guy, the Dodger guy, I know he's a super fast runner, and he hit a grounder to third base. I thought, well, maybe he's going to try to, maybe it'll be like a tie goes to the runner and I'll get the ball in the shot. And lo and behold, there was this collision because the ball was and as you see, not only am I shooting overhead, but we have to shoot through a netting, which can really mess with your focusing. But I was happy with the shot.
It's spectacular. I love it.
Okay, so COVID with protests. This was a scene that happened about 3 or 4 hours into a peaceful protest. There were some factions of people that showed up after most of the protest was over. They were in knee pads, they had knapsacks, and I'm thinking something's going down here. And the previous week I had got tear gas, not from the fault of the cops. They weren't attacking me, but I was in a crowd of people that got hit. So I learned my lesson. I had full goggles. I wear a neon green media vest, so they know I'm media. In this case, when those rubber bullets started flying, I ended up finding the next column to hide behind because I didn't want to get hit with one of these things. So it just escalated after someone in the crowd threw a firecracker. These are sheriffs, Riverside County sheriffs. If they're wearing green, they're sheriffs. If they're wearing blue or black, they're Riverside PD. And I didn't see Riverside PD shooting any any of these things, but I didn't have my eye on everybody at the whole time. This all happened within 25 minutes, you know, all this shooting of, I don't want to call them non-lethal bullets because they are lethal if you get hit in the eye. They're rubber pellets, they're plastic pellets, tear gas. And this is right downtown Riverside. I mean, people were scared. The Mission Inn's there, the art museum is there. And there was a curfew, and the cops let people stay past curfew. But then at that point, you know, they call it an unlawful assembly. And yeah, it turned pretty ugly. They moved these barriers, these protesters moved these barriers to hide behind. They broke down fencing. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
This is right across from the Mission Inn. No. Yes, City Hall, right across from the Mission Inn. And Gina, what strikes me about this is I'm home watching all of this from my TV, but to see your images and to see it from the street level and to think that all of this happens so close to Riverside Art Museum, again, all of these places in our daily experience, it just stops, you know, my heart beats, it stops. And Gina, it sounds like, you know, you guys are being, you know, you're prepared for future skirmishes, if you will, that your editor has, you know, purchased equipment for you photographers in preparation for the election and things. So, you know, are you guys expecting more
Well,
skirmishes?
we're always prepared. Like we always have, like my car now has fire gear, flood gear, COVID gear, and now riot gear. They're ordering us LAPD ballistic vests, anticipation of situations on election day. Hopefully that won't happen, but they are ordering them for us. Helmets. You know, I will get into the thick of it until I see a point where it's not worth my life. So I gauge it just like fires. I know my exit. I know how to get in, get out. It's not worth it to not have a plan for these types of things.
And I think I just want to clarify, you know, I mean, the protests were peaceful, right? I mean,
Yes.
these are students, these are youth protesting for racial justice. And so I think that's what's so heartbreaking to me is how the protests can be co-opted, and your photographs document that. And then there's this fear of the right of peaceful protest, you know? But I mean, this is a peaceful protest here.
Yes, this was a peaceful protest. They marched around downtown 3 or 4 hours until they got to city buildings where the supervisors and I think it's a sheriff's station that's downtown, and they had a police line. They would not let the protesters cross that line. And then I think the next photo you might see, if we have that one, the sheriff is actually kneeling down with the protesters. It'll be coming up. Oh, there we are. So they try to calm everybody down. But so after this, you know, the curfew came and some people left. But as I turned around and I saw people that I didn't see all night, all day, all afternoon, show up with knee pads and sticks in their knapsacks, I'm like, I knew something was going to happen. So this is the guy who was running away from those rubber bullets, and they carried him to this sidewalk. And as you'll see at some of these protests, there'll be somebody with a bag with a red cross on it, and they have assigned someone to be a medic. So if you see somebody like that in the crowd, you know that they're preparing for something. Because if it's supposed to be a peaceful protest, you don't need a medic. So they were firing firecrackers into the police. The I don't know if I want to call them protesters at this point, because these, to me, were some of the bad apples in the crowd.
That's a wonderful image, with the firecrackers. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I had to, it was tricky shooting it. I had to time it. When they hit the ground, they don't explode right away. So I got to figure if I count to 3, then they would explode, and I'd hit the shutter before then.
We have a bunch of people who commented about the peace banner in the previous shot, and that these are dramatic.
Oh yeah,
shocking.
I remember I was going to crop that out, and I'm like, no, I think that works in there. That's the way I shot it, pretty much. So these people were the peaceful ones. Nothing happened with this group at all. Again, firing the firecrackers into the cops. So we have that happening, and then we have a government meeting. It's called the Board of Supervisors, and they were getting a lot of pressure from residents to open up Riverside and defy health orders, defy the fact that you had to wear a mask. As you see, these people aren't wearing masks, and I'll have to tell you that 9 times out of 10, they had on a Trump hat or a Trump sign or something Trump. I don't put my political beliefs on anybody I'm covering. I did go up to those women and ask them why they were wearing a mask. And they said, well, because the CDC said only 2,000 people have died. And I said, well, the CDC doesn't get their information right away. They wait for the states to, tell them. So it's very delayed. And then I figured, you know what? I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to sway their mind. I was worried about me because the sign on the door of the Board of Supervisors county building says wear a mask, and the sheriffs were right there and did not enforce it. So that's what we're dealing with, all across the country. Even in Riverside, we're dealing with factions of people that don't want to wear a mask and think it's against it's a rights issue instead of a health issue. So this was after a protest. There's this Martin Luther King statue outside City Hall where a protest happened, and I saw this guy kneeling and praying. So I photographed him because, I'm in a public place. If I didn't shoot the shot then and waited to get his name later, I would have missed the moment. So I'm shooting as he's praying. I went up to him later and asked if he would mind if I got his name, and he's, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So you have some people who love being photographed, and you'll have others who don't. So this was a nice moment just by the MLK statue. Just a protest. I was trying to shoot it differently, the interclasped hands. Again, just looking for intimate moments. This was, again, I was driving around. I was looking for something that was protest COVID related, and I drove past this old church downtown, and I saw this, and I waited till the light got really low, and I put my camera on the ground and just waited till the light hit those photographs just from the side. These are all people that have been killed by police. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor was in there. There's lots of them.
Gina, this is the last of the photos that we have in the presentation.
Okay.
Would you like to open this up for questions? Now is the time, I guess, if people would like to go ahead and turn on their videos and turn on their mics, and we can you can ask Gina any question that you have. And Gina, thank you again so much for sharing your incredible work with us.
Oh, sure.
You know, Doug created a show in the Sunshine of Neglect about how this region doesn't get the attention that it needs to. And I always like to say that life happens here. And I, you know, as a young person was drawn to the Inlandia Institute where they were promoting Inland Empire poets and writers. And again, when I'm reading the LAtimes.com and I see my community, my friends on there, it just means so much, because what's happening in Riverside is important, and it matters to the narrative of Southern California, and it matters for the narrative in the nation. So I just want to say thank you again. And Doug, thank you too for having such insight and connecting Gina to different photographic moments. Doug, you had found a quote about Gina's approach.
Yeah, there was a...
I wonder if you can find that. I just thought it summed up Gina as a photographer so well. If you can find that quote.
Yeah, in a previous conversation, one of the things that struck me, Gina, talking with you was how many times you brought up in one way or another how respect for your subjects was important to you. From the very first photo we looked at, you know, where the people are on the side of the 60 freeway being evacuated, and you wanted to make sure that they retain their dignity. But throughout, you kept talking about it. And it brought to mind this quote. I actually printed it out so I could read it verbatim. I collect photo quotations and have a website, so I'm quite into this. And this is a photojournalist, Maggie Staber, who's really great, from Texas. I think she lives in Miami now. And she says, respect is the most important thing you put into your camera. It's like slicing off a little piece of your heart and putting it in with the film. And I really love that. Like, I mean, that seems to be built into you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's the only way you can approach it, because sometimes you're invading people's space. And I think you have to respect their space and who they are.
But I have to say that, you know, that if you hold the camera, you have the power in a way. So, and there are a lot of photographers who don't have that same respect that you just talked about. So they have the camera, they control it, they do what they want. And you're operating on a much more compassionate level. And I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the only way I know how to do it.
This
So
might be
Gina,
a credit to your
Gina's
mom.
Marianne, were you aware of the situations that your daughter was photographing? Was this a little bit shocking, or do you realize she's a badass? I got to say, Doug worked on a exhibition at the Riverside Art Museum with Susan Straight called Badass Women, and Gina, I think you're part of that club for sure.
Okay. I don't know if my mom's still on.
Yeah, I think she's muted.
Oh, yeah.
But I can tell you a story. So I'm Gina's little sister, youngest of the three. And there was a big earthquake. Which one was it? Northridge, Gina?
Could have been.
And we couldn't find her. And we found her on CNN. I was like, oh, there she is. And I think you were covering the CHIPS officers that maybe had passed away on the highway.
Oh, yes. And David Bowman was in a helicopter.
But you were on the highway.
I was on the highway where, you know, it had broken off. So I was standing at the edge looking down, because remember work, and he didn't make it because the freeway broke in half as he was riding, and he tumbled down. So yeah, another photographer friend of mine was in a helicopter documenting it, and I think that's where they saw me. So.
we knew she was safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
If living dangerously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really appreciate you guys showing my work, and everybody who tuned in. It's been a lot of fun. So.
I'll make another comment here, which is, it has struck me as we've gone along that this is sort of the California anti-Chamber of Commerce view of California. I mean, we have fires and catastrophes and mass shootings and heat waves and, you know, now earthquakes. So this is like, stay in Maine, don't move to California.
Right? It's like, Gina, I don't know what next sub-genre you'll have, you know, locust invasion.
Hopefully not. Well, yeah, you know, we always go through wildfire season, flood season. I'm fine not doing the earthquake thing, because I did the the Landers and Northridge. Those were bad enough. So yeah, I mean, I was telling everybody, you know, my humble beginnings were in Maine, and I think we had one shooting a year. And so I moved from Maine to San Bernardino to work at the San Bernardino Sun, which was quite a cultural shock for diversity. But I really loved the freedom that I had there. So yeah, I think photojournalism is just a great career. I'm hoping it lasts.
We have some more comments here.
Okay.
Calling you a poet photographer.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
Your talent and passion comes through in the photographs and impressive work. But I think the passion is important. You love photography. I mean, that's pretty evident from the first photo you described. What's your relationship to photography? Mine?
You know, I love going to work. I don't think of it as work. I mean, it's a challenge every day. We get such diverse assignments. And, you know, I was telling Doug, you know, give me a, you know, World Series game 7, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, games tied, over a celebrity portrait. So I'd rather have the stress of the game than, but I do my share of celebrity portraits, right, Ricardo? He's muted, he can't hear me. Yeah, he knows. We all have our strengths and weaknesses at the LA Times. Some of us are better at things than others, but we're all really good at a lot of things. And they let us pursue what we're good at. So I have to credit our editors. They don't, I mean, they might pigeonhole you a little bit, but you're free to do whatever you want. And as long as you keep producing great work, you could stay on your own and shine. I mean, so that's pretty much how we're handling COVID, because I haven't seen my colleagues in months. We do Zoom calls just like this. Yeah.
So we have Jan Sears saying, journalism is the best job, comma, even now.
Yes, right, Jan.
I love it.
So, well, we did that early. We did a run through, and we ran like 2 hours, but I think we were over chatting in the beginning before.
Yeah, any questions for Gina before we wrap up? Bill Thomas, you have any questions? Bill is part of our photo artist network at the Riverside Art Museum, and he's a real pro, and I'm sure completely understands all of the camera lenses and cameras, all the technical info that you were talking about.
Yeah, there's comments here that you reflect the human side of photography. I do like it that you mentioned, like, you know, wide angle or a long lens a couple times, which is irresistible to photographers, but you didn't dwell on any of that. Or a slow shutter speed in the hospital, in the doorway, the ER doorway. But some photographers end up talking about nothing but, you know, my favorite f-stop for this situation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know, tell me the story, right? I don't really care about the camera.
Yeah, I mean, cameras are always changing. So to me, it's not the gear, you know, it's your eye and how you can look at and approach each assignment.
Well, I just want to thank you again, Gina and Doug, and I'm going to do a real quick plug for the next program that we have in our portals, and this one is Design for a Healthier World. In addition, I'm a newspaper junkie, and I'm always online, and you know, I saw everything from, I think it was in Central America, they built a hospital bed out of cardboard that also doubles as a oh gosh, where people, like a tomb. Where do you put, how do you bury people? One of those. But you know, we've talked about balconies, coffin. Thank you. You know, balconies in hotels and or in apartments, and how, you know, our curator Todd Wingate talks about in California, there's this open floor plan, right? The kitchen and the living room. But when you have 5 different Zooms going on, mom, dad, and 3 kids, that open floor plan doesn't work anymore. So this conversation is going to be called Design for a Healthier World. And a lot of what we appreciate today in kitchen and bathroom design originated from past pandemics. So we have design insider and journalist Ariane Nardo, architect Greg Fisher, urban planner James Urhaus, and RAM curator Todd Wingate. Conversation about the best, worst, and most promising design innovations they've seen emerge during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't think Ophelia is on the line, but we also have coming up Unidos is a group fundraising for the Cheech, and they have unveiling Chicano art and culture preview of Cheech and Dialogo with Cheech Marin and Einar Helmux de la Torre brothers in conversation moderated by Eduardo Diaz, director of the Smithsonian Latino Center. So you can find all of this information on our website, and hope you'll join us again. And Gina, people can follow your work on LA Times and follow you on Twitter. Any other ways people can continue to keep up with you?
Right now, LAtimes.com. I don't post a whole lot on Facebook, and I'm not that much of an Instagram person, so Twitter and LAtimes.com. And did you say this was going to be posted on YouTube at some point or not?
Yeah, it's recorded. And I, Kelly, our director of marketing, are you here, I? Do you want to share about where they might be able to find the recorded video?
Yeah, no, we have a YouTube channel for the Riverside Art Museum, so it'll probably be up sometime next week.
Okay, great. I'll send out a link to some people who couldn't attend.
Yeah,
I'd appreciate it.
And what if people have ideas for great stories they think you should bite into? What should they do? Just email you?
Yeah, email me. I don't know if my email is available on here, but
cool.
Drew can send it out to people. Yeah, story ideas anywhere in Southern California. I do a lot in the Inland Empire because I live here, and I've lived here for a long time. And so anytime I don't have to get on the freeway to go to work, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, we have your email is up in the chat if people want to look. So,
okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
okay.
it was nice to see the homeschooling and family and so on. So we know it doesn't have to be a disaster or a fire or an earthquake or it can just
yeah, human interest. I mean, kids still aren't going to school, so I don't know what they're doing there. So I'd be interested to follow that through if there's more ideas there. Anything. I mean, what are the kids doing who should be playing water polo or playing soccer? Are they having club teams or, stuff like that? So yeah, anything. Even from Jay Ryder, I'll come to New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yay!
So,
Incredible body of work, Gina. My dad said that he worked with you for 4 years, but it must have been 10 because you just were so prolific and you accomplished so much when you worked with him at San Bernardino Sun. And I think just seeing all of the work that you captured the last couple of months during COVID, we see that you're one of the hardest working people in the city of Riverside.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you at the next one.